All right,
Just as a next,
starting over again. It is February 22nd, 6th week of the semester, which makes it a little over a little over a third through. So as I was saying, I'm sorry guys who are listening to this not on recording. We are starting argumentation, and we're going to focus especially on logos after a little discussion of logos, ethos, and pathos, and thinking about the logical argument of something is requires you to kind of look and pause and sort of slow down when we're talking about things like enthymemes and syllogisms. And so we're going to be using discussions more and starting this week. And I'm glad to do that too, because I've wanted to have the people who are not able to participate more participatory. And so this will enable us to be more of a whole class instead of two different groups of people. And so we'll have probably a discussion a week as we're going forward. And I just wanted to kind of warn you of that. What do I want? This. So I want to remind you about last week's homework, which was to work on the blog, making sure that you've revised so that you know what the audience is, what the purpose is, what the genre is, what the time is, or kairos. And I will be grading them tomorrow. If I haven't completed grading it, it's because I wanted to give you a chance to do a little bit more of what I was asking for. And I'm talking about the grade for the second pass of the process, which is not in the blog itself, but just in a separate column in your grade book. And we'll be having a discussion. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I want everybody to post at least the first time by Wednesday at noon and finish by next Monday at noon. And that will be our schedule for discussions so that you can get started. There'll be a break in between it so that people can interact with each other, and then and the deadlines are before class starts, so I can see what's going on there. So we start talking about the three pistis, which are the three types of proofs. And you may have not heard them as pistis or even proofs, but I'm pretty sure that you've heard, about logos, ethos, and pathos. They are, you want to try to make sure that you really understand what each of these terms is, and that it's sort of second nature for you. They relate to the 3 points of the triangle, rhetorical triangle, where ethos is the credibility of the speaker relating to that point of the triangle of the speaker or rhetor or writer. Pathos being the emotions of the audience. This is where we get our term pathetic, but this is definitely more than our sense of pathetic. I mean, all emotions from anger to sadness to humor are part of thinking about persuasion. And then logos, the message of the piece of rhetoric. And we often talk about logos with a focus on the facts and the logic that are in the rhetoric. So for today, I thought we could take a look at another Super Bowl ad from this year. I'm going to use a lot, the exercise, the discussion has to do with ads as well, because I think they're, very compact arguments. So they're easy to talk about. Obviously, a audio-visual piece of rhetoric is different from a written piece of rhetoric or an oral piece of rhetoric that's all language. And so you have to think about the differences between those. But to start with, we're going to think about just what sorts of strategies they do to convince you about something. Now, an advertisement, even a public service advertisement, which I think this might be called, is persuasive. And
bless you.
Thank you.
so one of the first things to ask yourself is, auto-generated. I hope it's not in Dutch. One of the first things to ask yourself is, what is this commercial arguing? What is it trying to persuade? What is its main claim? And then secondly, ask yourself, what are the different strategies it uses to convince you of this main claim? What are the emotional or pathos-oriented strategies? What are the rhetor or speaker or ethos-oriented strategies? And what are the logos or logic or meaning-oriented strategies?
Football is a microcosm of America. All races, religions, living, playing, competing, side by side.
Can you guys hear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was loud enough? Okay, I'm going to start over because I couldn't hear.
Football is a microcosm of America. All races, religions, living, playing, competing, side by side. I pray we dedicate ourselves to be the best team we can be. Let's choose to be for one another, to fulfill the promise of one nation, to be part of the solution, be part of the change, to try harder, show up, dive in, and stay at it.
Oh, can we touch for a second? Be us for a second. No matter what I give it to, my love looks better on you.
Football
Okay. So what is this advertisement arguing?
And we can change.
We can change. Anything more specific?
Somebody else?
Shall we use the chat? I cannot get my, here we go. All right. I guess my keyboard doesn't connect to it. Let's use the chat option here. So I want everybody to chat, use the chat to talk, to explain what you think is the argument that it is making overall. Other ideas?
I'm typing slowly.
Yeah. And think about this as an advertisement by the NFL. This is an advertisement by the NFL during the major NFL games.
I'm just gonna throw out there right now. I find also the fact that the NFL made that whole thing after giving Colin Kaepernick and other people who stood up so much, flack is kind of like, really? I mean, too little, too late, in my opinion.
Okay.
Performative activism is a thing.
What?
I said performative activism is a thing.
So this is getting at, I think they are trying to argue that not just that we can change, but the football organization can change. And
Oh, yeah.
that we now support, we, NFL, now supports Black Lives Matter and concern for injustice. And that's what everybody is saying in the chat is, that there's real injustice and we can work for this.
The NFL really did a 180, didn't they? That was awesome.
So, okay, so we have two competing views here. Jay said it's kind of awesome that they did a 180, and Micah says it's too little too late.
I mean, it's good that they can change, but I mean, where was that earlier? I mean, the only reason they
Yeah.
jumped on it is because they realized they were getting so much shit for it. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
I mean, it's good that you can
Funny.
change, but seriously, come on now.
Well, can organization, I mean, so do you, is it, well, I won't get at the question of whether it's fair to criticize them for trying. Okay, so it's definitely an argument about we the NFL can change, and we are going to support the fight against injustice. We are going to support Black Lives Matter because football is for everyone, as somebody said. That is, football should not just be, I'm not sure what the Kaepernick thing was, but it should not just be for the elite and those who are already successful. Does anybody know who the guy was who was speaking? I imagine he was a famous football player, but I don't know who he is. I should have asked my football fans in the house, but okay, so let's talk about logos, ethos, and pathos. So the pathos is quite obvious. What are the pathos strategies, the emotional strategies that they do? And you can type in the chat or you can speak aloud, but I want everybody to participate. So is playing on the victims of police brutality part of the pathos, Leah?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Yeah, I think so, because like it shows the names of like Breonna Taylor, Elijah McCain. I think that evokes like strong reactions from people.
So the names on the, I guess it's the hats.
The helmets,
The
yeah.
helmets of the players. What else does it do to evoke emotions? How does it start? He says, football is for everyone. And we have these close-ups on these people.
Mm-hmm.
People of color, of different ages, of different ethnicities, different sort of likeliness to be into football. None of them are football players.
No, but it could bring everyone together. I mean, I definitely don't play football, but I mean, me and a group of friends, we love watching it together. I mean, and then outside of that, we probably have very little in common, but you know, and coworkers also. I mean, what do you talk about sometimes? You talk about football. Or at least be like, hey, did you see that play? Or hey, did you see that cat that ran out in the middle of the field? I mean, it's something.
I remember when my kids were in soccer teams and we'd have all these issues and the coach said, instead of arguing about, you know, whose kid is being put into play or whatever, just go, how about those Razorbacks? And so the idea being that there'd be this shared interest in it. And of course, there are some people that aren't, but and football is supposed to be the American sport. I mean, this is called American football, what we play. Football everywhere else is what we call soccer. And although there are some countries that have developed football leagues, it's still an export from the United States. So somehow it's the American game. Well, that and maybe baseball, but baseball is definitely losing popularity. So, okay, so we have the names of the people who have been killed, and most people probably know who they are now. We have faces. What else evokes emotion?
Did it have music? I think it had some music.
It did have music. It was in the background, and it was quiet, and it moved to a larger tone. So, you know, the way in which music goes up, both in pitch and in volume, is one way that it kind of draws on our emotions. It had the voiceover of this speaker. What did he say? How did he speak in a way that evoked emotions?
Almost in a prophetic way.
You know, he had that speechifying tone, you know, and football is for everyone. You know, these pregnant pauses, these short staying, and then I can't even remember what he says other than that, which is kind of part of it, even though I've watched it now 4 or 5 times. Okay, how about ethos? How do they use ethos to persuade you?
Because we all know by now that there is injustice all around us, and it's really up to us to be part of the change that we hope to see.
How is that ethos the credibility of the speaker?
Oh, I'm thinking of
You're thinking maybe more pathos.
pathos. Yeah, sorry.
What is the image of the NFL that they are giving?
That they're a cross section of America, just like America is diverse, so is the NFL. That they're just like us.
So both the players and the audience is a cross section. One of the things I think that was kind of interesting, this is why I might push back on what Micah said, is I thought it was brave of them to show a picture of them all kneeling at the anthem, because you know, they're admitting that they were wrong. Basically, they're saying, you know, I mean, surely everybody understand, you know, when they see that, they go, well, you didn't before. But I thought that was kind of brave of them, that they were acknowledging the error that they had made. Of course, another part of the ethos is they had famous football players. That doesn't quite work with people like me who don't know who the football players are. But if you are a big football fan, who many of the audience would be, it would work as to who the players are. And then the third piece is logos. What kind of strategy for persuasion do they do with logos?
Sort of like for every action, there's an equal reaction, and whatever we do to try to make things right is going to help.
Yeah.
And
they specifically list a number. You know, they say, we are going to put X million dollars into fighting social justice. That's a fact. If they say we're going to put money into fighting social justice instead of the amount, what does that do? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, it's a little more flimsy that way.
Right, you could say, oh yeah, $100.
But
You know, it's a concrete specific.
yeah,
And that would be logos. Getting more into the details of how they're going to be putting their money into it would also be the details, although they're showing some of it. Let's take a look at it one more time. Somehow.
Football is a microcosm of America. All races, religions, living, playing, competing side by side. I pray we dedicate ourselves to be the best team we can be. Let's choose to be for one another, to fulfill the promise of one nation, to be part of the solution, be part of the change, to try harder, show up, dive in, and stay at it.
Oh, can we touch for a second? Be us for a second. No matter what I give it to, my love looks better on you.
So let's go back to the music. What did you
How to get
notice about the
super
music?
fast Wi-Fi anywhere, anytime in 6 seconds. Internet providers don't want you to know about this. Chris Hurst and Matthew Anderson are
The last drive, they'd only be down by.
What can you say about the music now that you heard it? Again.
Towards the end, you start hearing more of like the singing, I think.
Yeah, the first half is his voice with kind of a small background that's upbeat, but and emotional, sort of has these emotional sort of pitches kind of thing. And then the second half, you have a song that, you know, we believe we are something. What can, listening again, what can you say about his text, the football player giving the speech? How does that create some emotion? Do you notice any repetition?
Well, like as you mentioned earlier, the pauses, I think those have an effect on like the tone.
Mm-hmm. And part of the pauses are because he's repeating things, because he says, let's all be, let's commit to, and then he has a whole series of infinitive phrases, to do such and such, to be part of the change, to show up is his last one. And he stops at each one and shows a picture, and you show all the people involved in football, both as players and supporters, doing what he's saying. So that all the pieces, the pictures, the music, the language, all kind of contribute together to create logos, ethos, and pathos to hopefully inspire you. And one of the things he starts with, to fulfill the promise of one nation which is the beginning, of course, of the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under all. He doesn't actually say under all, but under God, I guess. But sort of invites you to think about sort of this American issue. Okay, so the discussion assignment that you're going to have this week is first going to ask you to talk about the one ad and talk about logos, ethos, and pathos. The second thing it's going to ask you to think about are the enthymeme. And so that's the new topic for the week, the enthymeme. Has anybody ever heard of the term enthymeme?
Not before now.
Not before now. And I have to say that before I started teaching persuasive and rhetoric, I was not real aware of it either. So it is actually a Greek term. And Aristotle talked about the enthymeme. And basically his point was, when you're talking about argument or logic in a syllogism, in a philosophical argument, we can talk about the syllogism. But when we talk about argument in rhetoric, we need to talk about the enthymeme. Now, what's the difference? We'll share our screen again. So I have a little some mini arguments that will be, I'm sorry, mini lectures that will be part of the material for this week. And an enthymeme is basically a reduced syllogism. And what Aristotle said was, you don't need the full syllogism in a speech. Of course, he's only interested in speeches. Because you have an audience, it would be kind of boring, he partly says, but also it's unnecessary to do it because the enthymeme is a thing that eliminates things that you can take for granted that your audience already shares with you. So let's clarify that we understand what a syllogism is. You've probably heard this, that everybody's, you're looking at my Blackboard shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's showing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. All right, so a famous syllogism you've probably heard is, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. It is formed by saying there a generalization, that's what the major premise is. And it's basically a categorical kind of statement. You can imagine a Venn diagram in which you've circled all men are mortal, and you've got the classification of mortal or of men, and it says it equals mortal. And then a minor premise, which is an individual case, an individual piece of data. So everybody should be able to see the different kind of statement between a major and a minor premise. A major premise is a generalization that applies across the board. A minor premise is a particular thing. If the syllogism works, then you come up with your conclusion automatically. It is a conclusion that is inevitable based on this major and minor premise. So if it's true that all men are mortal, and if it's true that Socrates is a man, then it also must be true that Socrates is mortal. Does everybody see how that works? If one of those premises are not true, then the conclusion will not happen. This is what's called deductive logic. So you're arguing about something from a generalization to a conclusion. What a enthymeme is a syllogism without one of those premises. And so here are these examples I've given. In this case, these cases, they're all general premises with an omitted minor premise, but it's still, you end up with a conclusion. And so they're basically in the form of a generalization plus a conclusion. Life is more interesting with a college degree. That's a generalization. So you should get a college degree. You could phrase it in the opposite. You could say you should get a college degree, which is a conclusion, with a because statement. Because life is more interesting with a college degree. The second one, the generalization is a Toyota 4Runner is an SUV that still acts like a truck. That's a generalization about all 4Runners. Then here's a conclusion. We should get a 4Runner. What's the unstated premise in that enthymeme? What's the unstated thing that has to be true for this argument to work? We should get a 4Runner because it is an SUV that still acts like a truck.
Trucks are great.
Yeah. What do we think about trucks? So if my husband says to me, we should get a 4Runner because it acts like a truck, what is he assuming? What is his point of view about it? And what
It's
is
going to be so handy.
Yeah. Does he like trucks? Yes. So he is implying, that is in the mist, the omitted premise, that we agree that we need an SUV that acts like a truck, that we like trucks, that it's better to have something that's more like a truck than a car. I mean, that's the whole point about SUVs. They're both trucks and cars. And I remember when they first came out, I was just shocked to see a Mercedes-Benz SUV. You know, I mean, Mercedes-Benz meant car and elegance, etc. But SUV meant truck, and that just seemed odd. Life's changed quite a bit by now. Everybody realizes that trucks can be elegant too, and they can cost $60,000 and more. So the enthymeme is, we should get a 4Runner because it's an SUV that acts like a truck. The unstated premise in there is that we want an SUV that still acts like a truck, or we want a vehicle that's more like a truck than a car. The city needs to join the 21st century. Generalization. Broad generalization, you know, we probably all could sort of agree with it. But, you know, the devil is in the details. So the city should start recycling. Conclusion. Or the city should start recycling because it needs to join the 21st century. What's the unstated premise? The unstated premise has to include both something about the 21st century and something about recycling.
That recycling can get the city to the 21st century.
Yeah, like, you know, recycling is essential for the 21st century or something like that. You know, when you make an argument with enthymemes, and we do this all the time, they will work if your audience shares your point of view, the unstated point, which is often a value, but they won't work if your audience doesn't share the point of view. So if I were to say, and I think I may have used this as an example before, you need, to my son, you need to clean up your room because grandma is coming, which is an enthymeme, a statement plus a because clause. What's the unstated generalization there?
Grandma wants to see a clean house.
Yeah, grandma wants to see a clean house, or it's important to me that grandma see a clean
Oh,
house.
yeah.
Maybe she doesn't care at all.
Yeah, it's still could be important to you.
But that's one of the things about the enthymeme. There's so many unstated points of view in that little phrase. Aristotle used this enthymeme. And this is from the Rhetoric. He says, this is an enthymeme. He says, enthymemes can be reduced even to a single statement. O mortal man, nurse not immortal wrath. That is the enthymeme. Mortal man, nurse not immortal wrath, meaning don't stay angry against immortals, I guess. I'm not really sure what immortal wrath is, so I lose. But whatever immortal wrath is, mortal men shouldn't keep feeling it. And then Aristotle goes on and he says, to say it is not right to nurse immortal wrath is a maxim. The added words, O mortal man, gives the reason. What is the reason that those words, O mortal man, gives? Why shouldn't humans nurse immortal wrath?
Because we're not immortal.
Yeah, we're not immortal. We're mortal. It goes back to Socrates. I think immortal wrath might be, you know, the anger of the gods to, you know, on serious things, and the idea is that humans can't do that kind of huge, grand, more event like Maybe not, but in any case, it can be reduced to a single statement, and it implies all sorts of other things. Here, I ask you there to work out the syllogisms. So here is a syllogism and an enthymeme. So the enthymeme is get a college degree because life will be more interesting. This syllogism there is life is more interesting with a college degree. An unstated minor premise is you want your life to be more interesting. Therefore, so, or in conclusion, you should get a college degree. So I will let you read those and think about all of them. Let me first, I am pronouncing enthymeme correctly. This is how you pronounce it.
Enthymeme.
I'm saying that because this young man in this video, which is otherwise very good, pronounces it weird. But here's a video about the enthymeme.
Example 1. Don't date her, she's a theater major. Okay. Example number 2. You don't love me because you didn't wash the dishes or buy me that one thing or do that one thing or say that one thing. You don't love me because you didn't do the thing. Third example. You're an illustration major. Don't you want to eat after college? All of these statements that I've given are arguments. There's a conclusion at the end or at the beginning in the case of the first two. And there's a supporting statement. The thing that's interesting about these ones is that the supporting statement by itself is not enough to make any sense with the conclusion. Let's look at the first one. Don't date her, she's a theater major. In this case, don't date her is the conclusion. Like, this is the thing you shouldn't do. And then the statement that he gives to back that up is she's a theater major. What does that have to do with anything? Unless you assume something. This is called an enthymeme, and it's extremely common in the way that we interact with people on a day-to-day basis. This type of argument has an unspoken required premise in order to get the first part to work. So don't date her, she's a theater major says something about theater majors. It says that theater majors are people that you should not date. This is the unspoken statement here. And that may or may not be true. You could attack that and look at that and say, well, I know so-and-so and they're a theater major and they're date-worthy material. Enthymemes aren't necessarily good or bad, but if you find a weak place in an argument, it's frequently going to be the enthymeme. And it's extremely helpful to be aware that there is an unspoken premise and that just because it's unspoken doesn't mean it can't be questioned. Statement 2, you don't love me because you didn't do the thing. In this case, they're telling you something about their definition of love. So you don't love me is the conclusion right here. You don't love me. And then the supporting statement is you didn't do this. So there's an assumption here that if you loved me, you would have done this thing. They're telling you about the definition of love and telling you a little bit about their love language if you're into that sort of thing. Again, just because it's unstated doesn't mean it can't be questioned. And it means you probably should question it and address it and say, so if I don't do the dishes, then I don't love you? Is this what you're saying? And then make it explicit and talk about it and work it back and forth. Yeah, relationship advice. Good stuff. Don't point me for anything. Third one, you're an illustration major. Don't you want to eat after college? In this case, there's actually a couple of premises that are hidden here. There's one about the purpose of college. It is essentially that the reason one goes to college and gets these things is to get a career and to get a job. And that may or may not be true. Again, it's unspoken. That doesn't mean it can't be questioned. In this case, maybe that's not why you're going to college. Maybe you're going purely for the educational experience. Maybe you are going for a job. The second one is with an illustration major, you can't get a job. So there's a specific thing about college and majors, and there's a specific thing about this particular major. And in this case, there are two unspoken premises, both of which, though they are unspoken, still deserve to be questioned. This is the nutshell about enthymemes. Pay attention for them, look for them. If you think of any other awesome examples, be sure to comment below. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and also to subscribe. Enjoy.
Um, I don't want to do that. So enthymemes are extremely common in all arguments and in all kinds of situations. They're useful because they provide a shorthand. You don't have to go into every step by step by step in an argument. And at the same time, they sometimes can be questioned, or they sometimes will not work if your audience has totally different perspectives. Political slogans are great examples of enthymemes. The slogans that we had in the just finished election, Biden said, "Build back better," and Trump said, "Make America or keep America great again." Those are enthymemes. The arguments are vote for Biden because he will build back better, and vote for Trump because he will make America great again.
Oh no, he'll keep it great again.
Keep it great again. Yes, it changed.
Got a little lazy on that one, I think.
You what?
Got a little lazy on that one. Like, I don't know, what should we do? Keep. Just add keep in there.
So obviously, if you don't, I'm trying to find my, all right, there we go. If you don't hold to the points of view of each candidate, then it doesn't work for you. But if you're, or you may hear it in a different way. So if you're a Biden supporter and you hear build back better, vote for Biden because he'll build back better, what are some of the unstated assumptions there?
We got a lot of work to do.
We got a lot of work to do.
We got a lot of undoing to do.
Okay, so the simple word of build back implies that the previous administration has unbuilt things or destroyed things.
And then, of course, do it better than the last guy.
Then better than, we were already having problems. So he's acknowledging we're not just going to build back to what it was before Trump, but we're going to reinstitute the same things, but make things even better than they were. If you don't support Trump, Biden, then you hear that in a totally different way. You don't hear those, you don't hear it as a positive thing and a reason to vote for Biden. Likewise, Trump says, keep America great again. What are the unstated premises? Well, first of all, the keep America great harkens back to the make America great. And I think probably everybody does the mistake that I did, which was re-articulate make America great. What are the unstated premises in make America great?
What's wrong with it?
that there was something wrong with it, that they did it to it. Again, a previous administration wrecked America. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
what are some of the specifics that people who are Trump supporters hear?
I have trouble putting myself in that frame of mind.
Well, one of the most common things was this idea of being an isolationist, make America great again. And we saw that, you know, he changed the tariff system with China. He basically cut off things with everybody else. So that's part of his argument, that America needs to be in charge of America and not focus on anybody else. And it's really hard for me as a non-Trump supporter to hear that in any way other than cynical, as in, you know, make America great again, make it more white, make it more
Isolated
for the rich people, and see this as and it's hard for me to hear that in any way except negative. But if you're a Trump supporter, you hear that as
build that wall.
well, and so build that wall is an enthymeme. What's the unstated premises?
that we need a wall.
Okay, that we need a wall.
Why? We need to keep other people out.
We need to keep other people out.
In retrospect, keep us in and keep us from leaving.
Maybe. But this is why you begin to see why it was so hard to argue that Trump incited insurrection on January 6th, because it's all through enthymemes. It's all through unstated assumptions. And even saying you have to fight for X, which the Republican defense of him brought up, and they had a video that showed all these situations when Democrats used the word fight. And they just had this montage of videos that said fight. Well, so somebody on the Democratic side or listening to any of those original ones would have said, that person didn't mean fight in a literal sense. They meant fight in a more rhetorical sense. But so how do they prove that when Trump said you need to fight for what's important, that meant literally go physically and bear arms and do this? And so, and I mean, I'm not sure you ever can. That's the problem with the problem and strength of language. It relies on so much that's unstated. But the enthymeme is the key part of rhetorical argument that has these unstated premises. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but in my syllabus, I called the topic of enthymeme mostly the topic on ethos. And that's because I think when you start talking about enthymemes, what you're talking about are the unstated values that work between the speaker and the audience. And in order for something to be persuasive, the audience has to perceive the speaker as having the same values as them, and then, you know, then you act on it. So just quickly, what do you think are the enthymemes in the NFL justice campaign? So it's, the argument is, you know, support the NFL because, or support football because, why? What are they arguing?
We're fighting for justice.
We're fighting for justice. And what's all the unstated thing there? Well, included in that is that they screwed up in the earlier iteration. So they know that, and there's sort of an apology in there. Well, maybe not. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. Is there an totally implied apology in there from the NFL? Included in there is the point of view that there is a need to fight injustice, that there is systemic racism. And that's been a huge change in the whole shift in the Black Lives Matter and improved justice movement, is that the values of people have shifted so that they begin to understand that in fact there was such a thing as systemic racism, because many, many, many times, and all of us who are, well, I'll just speak for myself, as a white person, I just didn't think about it that much. Or I thought about it as, you know, something in the past and not something that needs to be thought about in the present. And one of the things that's been kind of striking to me is thinking back on all the American history instruction that I received. And, you know, the nobody talked about slavery as a bad thing, as a good thing rather, but they didn't talk about it as such an extreme thing. And I grew up in the North, so definitely describe the Civil War as a issue over slavery, but it, you know, wasn't a pervasive kind of thing. And now I begin to see how in many ways it is.
Well, even I think about elementary school when we have the Civil War unit. I mean, we talk about it and you talk about how bad it was, but you kind of glossed over some facts. It's almost like I don't know. I mean, the way I was raised, my parents like raised me with the fear of God, to be afraid of my own shadow. So, I mean, I personally would have handled like hearing bad things, but it's almost like they were trying to shield other people from how bad it really was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, more or less it was whitewashed. So.
And, you know, so they've done these surveys and they find that the attitudes of middle-class white Americans have radically changed over these last 6 months. This is why I think we're in a kairotic moment that maybe something can happen. I think it's actually the logos that has done that. It's that the facts have changed and we've heard the facts when we never did before. Okay. So this week's homework. Finish the blog because I will grade it tomorrow. I'm talking about the second blog grade. I've graded everybody's first blog grade. Read the second part of chapter 3. This is a link to the syllabus or the schedule, has the actual pages in there. I want you to read the second part of chapter 3, and also some later things and also a discussion. And over here on the schedule. It's pages 50 to 70 and then 81 to 90. 81 to 90 is an example of an analysis of something, focusing on the enthymeme. And here's the discussion point, started by February 24th, finished by March 1. If you go into the syllabus or the Blackboard shell, if you are in this week 6 through 8 argumentation, by the way, you always can find things if you go to course material, and then all the things are in here, and then weekly content. And then I will put them up over here when we're working on them. I'll be taking 4 and 5 down, but you can always come back and find 4 and 5 here. This is the unit. And read this. And then go do this discussion. This will get you to the discussion forum, which you could also get over here. And here are the instructions.
Cool.
So the first part is to talk about this commercial. It's a Dove commercial called The Mother's Body. Anybody remember the whole Women's Body campaign by Dove?
A little bit.
Maybe. This is a very emotionally oriented video. And then the second part is to pick one of last year's Super Bowl ads and discuss it. And for both of these, logos, ethos, and pathos, and then the enthymemes. And if you can't expand into the full syllogism or tool diagrams, I really don't expect you to be able to do that yet. But that's the direction that we're going. And the week 6 and 8 on the syllogism, the enthymeme, and Toulmin. We are starting explaining, I am starting explaining Toulmin in this same little mini lecture. We'll talk about that Wednesday and next Monday. Has anybody heard of Toulmin reasoning in your maybe persuasive writing courses?
Mhm.
Okay. Basically, Toulmin is an expansion of the enthymeme, identifying what the unstated premise is, and he calls it a warrant. So it's all kind of connected. All right, so have a great couple of days.
You too.
See you later.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.